to our next video on the topic we started before Easter. So before Easter we were talking about adaptations and competition. Today we need to have a think about how these adaptations allow organisms to survive change. So by the end of the lesson you should be able to describe how organisms adapt to environmental changes, you should be able to explain how competition can lead to adaptation, and you should be able to evaluate data to explain a predator-prey relationship. So as you would for any other lesson, I would like you to write this title in your books, please. Adapting to change. I would like you to put the date in the top corner, and we're going to be making notes on the blackboard as we did last time. So, just to recap, just to refresh our memory, we can say that living things have adaptations that allow them to survive and compete for resources. Okay? So we've said that living things have adaptations that allow them to survive and compete for resources. Now, some of these words we defined last lesson, one of them being adaptations, another one being competition, and another one being resources. If you can't remember what these words mean, I strongly suggest you stop the video now, have a look through your notes from what we said last lesson, or if you haven't done last lesson, you really need to do that lesson before you start this one. Okay? Now, these adaptations also allow organisms to survive changes in their environment. Okay? So we can say that adaptations also allow organisms to survive changes in their environment. Now, changes in the environment can be lots of things, but for today we're just going to talk about two different types of changes. The one change that we're going to talk about today is the changes in seasons. So we can put, e.g., changes in seasons, and we can also put amount of predators or prey. Okay? Again, if you don't know what the word predator and prey means, I strongly suggest you watch the video that I did previously as we define that in that lesson. So, let's have a think about how organisms are adapted, or they adapt to, a change in the seasons. So we can put, how do organisms cope with seasons? So how do organisms cope with seasons? So trees are the easiest ones to do. Plants are the easiest ones to do. Plants grow very, very quickly during the spring and during the summer when the weather is wet and warm. Okay? But in the winter, they lose leaves. They stop growing and they lose their leaves. That saves energy because it's not as warm and it's much more difficult for them to do photosynthesis. Okay? The leaves fall off because once they're at the bottom of the tree, they can decompose and give the tree or the plant nutrients which it can reuse. So we can say, we can put, first of all, plants, ... We can say, grow quickly, in spring, as it is warm and wet. Okay? We can then say that in the winter, plants lose their leaves to save energy. Okay? So they lose their leaves in the winter to save energy. The fallen leaves, provide warmth and protection to the base of the plant. So the fallen leaves provide warmth and protection to base of the plant, and they provide nutrients. So the dead leaves provide nutrients to the soil. So dead leaves provide nutrients. Okay? So the dead leaves provide nutrients to the soil. So we've said that during the summer, plants grow quickly as it's warm and wet. In the winter, they lose their leaves to save energy. The leaves that fall on the ground provide insulation. They provide protection to the base of the plant. And the dead leaves decay and provide nutrients. The other ones we need to talk about are animals, because animals have changes to the seasons. Now, animals do lots of different things to survive the winter. The first one is hibernation. Now, some mammals hibernate during the winter, like bears, okay? So we can say that for hibernation, that, what am I doing? I need a different colour. Hibernation, no, what we'll do is we'll use yellow. Bears sleep somewhere warm, in winter. Okay? So hibernation is when an organism sleeps through winter. Other organisms migrate. So migrate or migration. Migration is when organisms such as birds fly somewhere warm for the winter where there's more food. So we can say birds fly somewhere warm in winter where there is more food. Okay. The final one that we're just going to talk about is that some grow thicker fur. Grow thicker fur. Okay. Sheep grow thick coats of wool during the winter, and this keeps them warm. So we can just put sheep grow more wool in the winter. So we've said that living things have adaptations that allow them to survive and compete for resources. Adaptations also allow organisms to survive changes in their environment, such as changes in the seasons. How do organisms cope with the seasons? Plants, they grow quickly in the spring. When it's warm and wet, they grow lots of leaves. In the winter, they lose their leaves to save energy. The fallen leaves provide warmth and protection to the base of the plant, and the dead leaves provide nutrients. Animals, during the winter, they can hibernate, such as bears. They sleep somewhere warm through winter. They can migrate. Birds fly somewhere warm in the winter where there's more food. Or they can grow thicker fur. Sheep grow more wool in the winter in order to keep warm. The other one that we need to talk about, or the other change we need to talk about, is the amount of predators and prey. And to do this, I'm going to be talking about the snowshoe hare and the lynx. Okay? So if we can just clear this, but before we do, you should now be able to tell me how organisms adapt to environmental changes. We're now going to look at these last two. So, please remember, you can pause the video at any time. You don't have to watch it continuously. If you didn't get some notes from the previous slide, you can stop the video and go back. So we're going to put at the top predator-prey relationships. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to define the word interdependence. Okay? Interdependence. Interdependence. That's INTERDEPENDENCE. Interdependence can be defined as when one population of organisms relies on another population of organisms for survival. Okay? So when one population of organisms relies on a group of other organisms in order to survive. Now, an example of this would be the snowshoe hare and the lynx. So we can put, e.g., the snowshoe hare and the lynx. Now, the snowshoe hare is a prey, whereas the lynx is the predator. Okay, let's just see if I can cut this and move it over, because that's going to really annoy me. I can't do it. It doesn't matter. or no, I can't do it. So the snowshoe hare is the prey and the lynx is the predator. So just for reference, the snowshoe hare is the prey and the lynx is the predator. Okay? Now, the snowshoe hare is quite weird. Well, it's not weird, but it's unusual. The reason it's unusual is because the snowshoe hare changes colour depending on the seasons. So in the winter, the snowshoe hare is white. This gives it better camouflage across a white snow background. Whereas in the spring and the summer, the snowshoe hare turns brown, so that it's better camouflaged from the lynxes. So in the winter, the snowshoe hare has white fur. In the spring and summer, it has brown fur. This allows it to be camouflaged away from the lynx. Okay? And it increases its chances of survival. This is an adaptation that it has. So what we've got here, and I'm going to copy this and take this over to our whiteboard. What we've got here is, it'd help if it actually copied. So copy. Oh. It's not going to copy across. How about, because I'm on a Mac. So it's a good job that I have got an image, I think. Can we add image? It's in my documents. There we go. So we've got a graph that looks like this. Okay. Now what this shows is time in years, the number of snowshoe hares, which is in green, and the number of Canadian lynx, which is in red. You notice that as the snowshoe hares goes up, the number of Canadian lynx goes down. But after a short period, the number of snowshoe hares will go down and the number of Canadian lynx will go up. That's because that when the snowshoe hare goes up, the lynx has more to eat. Therefore, its population will rise because it has more resources. But when the number of snowshoe hares comes down, the number of lynx will quickly follow because the lynx will have less to eat. Okay? So we can say, we can just annotate this. We can use this blue colour. We can say that when the hare increases, so when hare numbers, we'll put prey in brackets, when hare numbers increase, the predators have more to eat. The lynx, which is the predator, has more to eat. Has more to eat. Therefore, the lynx reproduce more. So if we have a look back at our graph, when the number of snowshoe hares go up, the lynx have more to eat, and therefore they start reproducing more. When they start to reproduce more, their numbers start to go up. Okay? We can say that an increased number of lynx leads to more hare's been eaten. Has been eaten. And their numbers drop. So because the number of lynx has gone up, more of the hares get eaten, and therefore their numbers start to drop. And then essentially what happens, now that there's fewer hares, it means that there are less lynx because they have less to eat. So we can say fewer hares leads to less lynx as there is not enough food or enough hares to eat. So we can add some numbers to these. It says when the hare numbers increase, the lynx has more to eat and therefore they reproduce more. So we can add a 1, say, here. We can also add a 1 here and here. So this is number 1. An increased number of lynx leads to more hares being eaten and their numbers drop. So we can put a 2 there. We can put a 2 there. A 2 there. Fewer hares leads to less lynx as there's not enough hares to eat. So we can put there as a 3. And if you look, the number of lynx drops after each number 2. Like so. Okay? And we get this constant cycle of organisms, their numbers changing because they're being eaten, and therefore there's more reproduction, then their numbers drop, therefore there's less reproduction, they have less to eat, and their numbers drop. We get this cycle of organisms being predated or preyed upon. This is known as a predator-prey relationship. If you look, this is interdependence. The number of lynx depends on the number of hares, and the number of hares depends on the number of lynx. So these are relying on each other, giving us interdependence. Okay? So food sources can be a change in the environment, and organisms have to adapt to it. So we can just put down here as a final thing that food availability is a change in the environment that organisms have to adapt to. So, you should now be able to tell me how organisms are adapted to their environmental changes. You should be able to explain how competition can lead to adaptation. And you should be able to evaluate data to explain a predator-prey relationship. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause, I'm going to clear the screen. I want you to now pause the video, and I would like you, please, to have a go at the questions on the PowerPoint that look like this. Make sure you've got a different coloured pen because we are going to go over the answers, and I want you to mark and or correct your work as we go over it. So pause the video now, have a go at the questions in your book, please, and we will come back together and mark it in a moment. So, you should have now had a go at these questions. You should have a different coloured pen. Doesn't matter what colour it is, preferably green, but if you haven't got green, it doesn't matter. And we can go over the answers on here. So if we go to add image, we can add these two. In fact, we'll have to add them one by one. So let's make this a bit bigger so that I can write on it. So this one should read, get a red pen, go to here. So this one should read that a predator-prey relationship shows how the population of a predator and its prey are linked. When there are lots of prey, the population of predators increases. However, a large predator population will cause the prey population to decrease. There is not enough food for all of the predators, so its population decreases. As a result, the prey population will increase. So this should read, a predator-prey relationship shows how the population of a predator and its prey are linked. When there are lots of prey, the population of predators increases. However, a large predator population will cause the prey population to decrease. There is not enough food for all of the predators, so its population decreases. As a result, the prey population will increase and the cycle starts again. Question 2 and 3. So let's just add the image like so. Move it over here so that we can write our answers. So the next one, question 2, describe how competition can lead to adaptation. So we can say that a change in the environment, for 1 mark, change in the environment will increase competition for resources. So if you get this change in the environment, you'll get an increase in competition for resources. The ones with the best adaptation will survive, pass on their genes, and therefore the adaptation is passed on. So we can say those with the best adaptation for survival will pass it on to their offspring. This is something we spoke about in the previous lesson. So if you're not 100% certain about this, you need to go back and re-watch that video. So it says, describe how competition can lead to adaptation. 3 marks. You should have said a change in the environment will increase competition for resources. Those with the best adaptation for survival will pass it on to their offspring. And you also needed to say that those without the best adaptations die. So others die. So the organisms that aren't very well adapted for the change in the environment will die. Question 3, it says, ladybirds with 7 spots have spread to the UK from Europe. They are more successful than native UK ladybird as they eat more aphids and reproduce faster. They also eat other ladybird species. Explain in detail how the population of 7 spotted ladybirds will vary over time. Draw a predator-prey graph as part of your answer. So you just needed to sketch this. So what you should have done, you should have drawn a rough sketch of some graph axes. You should have put the one set of ladybirds in one colour. So which ones have we got? We'll put UK ladybirds in this colour. UK ladybirds are in that colour, and you should have drawn sort of a transverse wave that looks like this. And the other one was the European ladybird. So we could have put, I'm going to put EU ladybird. And this line will be the opposite to that one. So as this one goes down, this will go up, and vice versa. Okay? In terms of marks, you'd get 1 mark for the orange, 2nd mark for the blue. Okay? You should have then said, for a 3rd mark, as UK ladybird goes up, the EU ladybird follows, as it has more to eat, for a 4th mark, as the EU ladybird has more to eat, has more to eat. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4 marks. Your 5th mark comes from saying that as EU ladybird goes up, as the EU ladybird goes up, comma, the UK ladybird goes down. And for your 6th mark, you needed to say, this is because the EU ladybirds are eating all the UK ladybirds. So EU ladybirds eat the UK ladybirds. So your marks come from saying you needed to draw a graph or sketch a graph that looks like this with 2 lines. As the numbers of one goes up, the numbers of the others go down. You needed to say that as the UK ladybird numbers go up, the EU ladybird numbers go up shortly after because they've got plenty to eat. But as the UK ladybird numbers go down, the EU ladybird numbers follow shortly after because they've got less to eat and more of them starve to death. So, you should now be able to explain how organisms adapt to environmental changes. You should be able to explain how competition can lead to adaptation, and you should be able to evaluate data to explain a predator-prey relationship. Remember, you can go back in this video and pause it to check any of your answers or catch up any of your notes. You don't have to watch it fully. You can just stop and start it whenever you want. And that concludes the end of today's lesson. So I will see you in the next lesson. If you have any questions, please comment in the Google Classrooms below or drop me an email. Thank you.